If you were to ask someone, fan or average viewer, what they think of when they hear Thomas the Tank Engine, no doubt the first thing that comes to mind for them is this. The synthy theme song, the model train props and sets, the real-life working steam effects, amazing cinematography, the insane crash sequences, and even the characters themselves. That's classic Thomas for you, baby. The amazing run of 7 seasons that continue to be beloved by many, created by legends Britt Allcroft and David Mitton. It definitely impacted my love for Thomas when I was younger. I have very fond nostalgic memories for most of these seasons growing up, as a lot of other people do. And for this video, now that some time has passed, I thought it would be fun to take a trip down memory lane and see how these seasons have held up. Because as great as most of these seasons are, some are definitely weaker than others. So that's what I'm going to be diving into today. And for the heck of it, let's rank them. Season 1. Oh, that's a nice one. The grandfather of the Thomas series. The one that started the whole thing. Let's pause for a moment of respect, shall we?
That's enough. Hit it!
So season 1 is a very good season. Everyone says this is one of the weaker classic seasons before it really started to grow and develop into something bigger. And well, yeah, that's not untrue, but I feel like we all seem to take for granted just how unique and special this season was for its time. Because as great as those later seasons are, this was the one that started basically everything. Its tone is very laid back and simple, very storybook-esque, compared to the more adventurous and dark seasons. And to me, that's what makes it stand out. This really was the best introduction we could have ever gotten to each of these characters, who are now beloved by all. This season adapts Audrey's writings from the book series so perfectly. The stories are ripped straight from the pages and broadcast into TV in such a faithful and honorable way. And all the characters are clearly defined, each having their own distinct personalities. Thomas is cheeky and cocky, Gordon is big and proud, Edward is kind and loyal, Henry is sympathetic, etc. Every character gets a good amount of focus here, and the ones that don't make up for it next time. There's a lot of really good episodes in this, like the sad story of Henry or Flying Kipper, or even the very first Thomas and Gordon. But it's not also without some mez, like James and the Coaches or Thomas and the Guard. But still, this season is too good and nostalgic to be called bad. It has a strong focus on what it wants to be, and builds its characters up in a realistic and believable way. It's a very simple, but very strong foundation. Season 2. So I have an interesting history with Season 2. I actually grew up with the season the most as a kid, and I even tried remaking all 26 episodes with my own Take and Play toys. I didn't have any of the new characters introduced in the season at the time though. I only owned the characters from Thomas through Toby, so I just used whatever other character I had on me. A lot of people call Season 2 the gritty classic season, and I absolutely agree. This season is a lot darker than the comfy stuff in Season 1, introducing more mature themes related to scrapping and being replaced by the next big thing on railway traction. But that's a good thing. It gives us new concepts and ideas to explore. Every heavy topic and story concept that the show would play with later on all started here. Something else I find especially fascinating about this season is its structure. The production of the season was very ramshackle, and the stories pulled from the books were all randomized, leading to a few cut episodes. But somehow they managed to make it work. This feels like a straightforward narrative. Everything that happens doesn't feel out of the blue, and the new characters are just as good as the old ones, with fan favorites like Duck, Donald and Douglas, Diesel, Daisy, Bill and Ben, and Boko. And of course, how could I talk about Season 2 without mentioning Percy? Percy appears in a bunch of episodes this season and has a wonderful arc. He gains enough inner confidence to stand up to the bullies that try to push him around, and is promoted to Thomas's branch line. Britt Allcroft herself confirmed years back that Percy is her favorite character, and man, I can tell. He was really pushed this season. Overall, Season 2 is great, and very much an improvement in a lot of areas. And so, I'd say it goes above Season 1. Season 3. Season 3. Undeniably one of Thomas's biggest seasons yet. Again, there's so much improvement here over the previous. The visual imagery, score, and model work reached their peaks here, which stays consistent for the next couple of years or so. This season was also the introduction of music videos by composers Michael Donnell and Junior Campbell, who would deliver so many catchy and memorable songs until pretty much the end of their tenure. Easily the biggest highlight of the season is the characters, who all get so much love and development here. It feels like they wanted to take things back a bit and explore what makes them tick. We learn things about them we never knew before, like we learn Henry has a passion for nature and loves being around the forest, James is very proud of his red paint work, Duck dreams of what lies beyond the sea. And it's not just that. Several other characters are treated like real heroes when they need to be. Douglas rescues Oliver from Scrap and Escape, and Bill and Ben rescue the workers from a landslide in Heroes. These characters really feel like characters, and by the end of the season, they're in a different place compared to where they started. If that ain't development, I don't know what is. Okay, so the controversies. So this season was a mix of stories derived from the Railway series, magazine stories written by the series' future head writer, Andrew Brenner, as well as other completely original stories written by Allcroft and Mitten. One of the primary reasons for diverging from the original books was that many of the stories not yet adapted featured large numbers of new characters, which would be too expensive to produce. Another reason was that the producers wanted more stories about Thomas, as he was the main character. Wilbur Awdry pretty famously hated this change. He thought the show writers were very stuffy, and that they could write his style of storytelling better than him. He criticized Thomas being crane-shunted into stories he wasn't originally in. And out of all the episodes not based on his work, he criticized Henry's Forest the most, because it was too unrealistic and broke the rules of real railway operations. In spite of some of the controversy it's garnered, it's still so easy for me to love Season 3, changes and all, and why it's so many people's favorite season. This was Thomas's biggest year, their first and full entrance into the golden run of the series, and that was very exciting. Season 4. So I have Season 4 put between Seasons 2 and 3, much better than the former, while still slightly beneath the latter. This was a wonderful part of Thomas's history. This is easily the best season in regards to its world building. We're introduced to so much in the season. It isn't thrown at us from the get-go. Everything that's given to us is built up very slowly and gradually, and we get to immerse ourselves in these new parts of Sodor. Of course, I'm talking about the Skarloey Railway. Half the season is spent introducing the narrow gauge engines. Each one is very distinct, and all their episodes are bangers. Skarloey is the old and wise one, Sir Handel is the grumpy one with a bad attitude, Peter Sam is the kind and innocent one who loves his new railway, Rusty is the only diesel in the railway who's very hardworking and stands no nonsense, and Duncan is the reckless, rude, and complaintive sort. You get the idea. All the Skarloey stuff is brilliant. The standard gauge stuff, though, is what holds it back a couple notches. There's no real continuity between them, they're all very randomized and episodic. Don't get me wrong, they're all still really good, but they do drag the season down just a bit. I still really love Season 4, but because of the lack of focus in the last few stories, and Mind That Bike being a pretty odd final episode, it's kinda there in the middle. Season 5. Okay, this is the big one. The amazing batch of episodes that was Season 5. Season 5 was absolutely the peak of the classic era. No question. Every episode was an absolute banger. Except Gordon and the Gremlin, I don't really care for that episode that much. But yeah, other than that, banger after banger after banger. The tone is so varied, the musical score is so cinematic, and overall it looks and feels even better than it ever has. The stories remain true to the characters, the darker elements are a welcome change, with themes related to the supernatural and scrapping being very prominent here. And yet for every dark episode, you'll also find a sense of warmth, with a great sprinkle of lighthearted stories that make you feel, well, happy. This is easily the best season in terms of balancing its tone. You never know what you're going to get with this season. It could be scary in one episode, or funny in another, or exciting and fast-paced in another. It's a ride and a half. And even though he had nothing to do with it this time, Awdry's style of writing is still very much present here, and the show crew stuck as faithfully as they could to the stories and characters he created. and all the new characters introduced are really enjoyable, with Cranky the Crane being the biggest standout. You could really tell how much the crew wanted to make the season as big and as adventurous as it could, and they absolutely delivered on all cylinders. And if only one episode that's just okay is the lowest you can go, then I think that's the sign you created a damn good piece of television. I really don't know what else to say about Season 5 you haven't already heard before. It's peak Thomas. We'll never get close to the perfection this gave us ever again. Easily, hands down, the best classic Thomas season, and it rightfully goes at the top. Season 6. Yeah, I think this is where a turn started. So this season was released after the train wreck, no pun intended, that was Thomas and the Magic Railroad. After that ridiculous, nonsensical, frankly terrible movie, Thomas's image was rather tainted in the eyes of the general public. People looked at Thomas as just another dumb kid show. The series itself took a notable dip in quality following the movie, and it became pretty apparent that the show writers were running out of steam. Again, no pun intended. Now, does this decline in quality mean I dislike these last two classic seasons? Oh no, absolutely not. I think Season 6 is still a pretty good Thomas season, with a few fatal flaws that keep it back from being pretty great. On one hand, the new characters are really good and all serve some sort of purpose. Salty is a great character. I love that he becomes a mainstay at Brendam Docks from here on out. Elizabeth is also neat world building, and she adds some background to the Topham Hatt, which is cool. There's also Harvey, who's alright. He's a fine character. I like the concept of an engine with a giant crane attached to it, and he does become a staple with the breakdown train. Other than that, I mean, he's okay. And then there's the Pack. I love the Pack, and I think they're a really great concept. All being road vehicles in charge of all the construction. I love every character in this fleet, and I especially love how they remain a part of the show to the very end. However, the color correction and lighting is pretty dull. The tone is also more lighthearted this time and doesn't play around with it as much as last season. It kinda gives off the impression that the crew wasn't really trying as hard and didn't much care this time around. The characters also take a pretty big dive this year, and are all reduced to flat, flanderized personalities. Gordon became the always grumpy and prideful one, Edward became the always old and pathetic one, and Percy became an idiot. Sadly, this would become a trend for the show moving forward. While I don't think this season is bad by any means, it's definitely the weakest classic season, so unfortunately, it goes at the bottom. Season 7, and now we come to the final season of the classic era. Unfortunately, when this season premiered, it came out right after the buyout by Hit Entertainment. And as we all know, they changed a lot of the show's original format, in terms of music, writing, direction, and even narration.
I'm a great Western engine. I shouldn't have to shiver.
All of these changes were pretty stark, and I think is the main reason that soured a lot of people's views on this season. I'll personally admit that I wasn't a huge fan of this season myself when I watched it for the first time, but I am not a child anymore, I am a teenager. And to give credit where credit is due, this is most certainly not a bad season. It feels like a finale season in a lot of ways, and it makes me wonder if that was intentional. The biggest reason being that almost every major character thus far had something to do. The new characters introduced here are really good and brilliant concepts that feel like they were pulled straight out of the Railway series. We got Emily, Murdoch, Fergus, Arthur, and of course, Spencer. Easily my favorite of the bunch. The main characters themselves were also mostly done justice here. A lot of them were handled fairly well compared to last season and don't feel as flanderized. Every character this season had quite a lot to do here. Well, everyone except Duck, weirdly. Hello! There's plenty of good to be found in the season, but of course it's not without some shortcomings. The amount of stock footage here is unbelievable. I seriously started getting more and more frustrated at how many times I spotted shots from older seasons. Like, they really didn't have any new recent tracking shots of the engines passing by? They couldn't have just filmed a new shot quickly? The end result just looks so lazy. There's also a lot of the forced morals at the end of most of these episodes, and they get kinda old and annoying.
It's not nice to copy the way others speak. You hurt Salty's feelings. We were just having fun, said Percy. Maybe spotless records are made to be broken, smiled Thomas. And then mended again, finished Arthur. Just like friendships.
They started doing this in season 6, technically, but here it's a little more noticeable, as if the writers thought kids would be too dumb to know the moral of the story is right away. But those aside, I think season 7 is a very good entry, and a more than nice send-off to classic Thomas. Still not as good as what came before. The classic era of Thomas was such a joyride, with so many iconic and memorable moments to count. All 7 of these seasons really were something special. Even as it started to fall off just a tad bit, it managed to maintain the spirit and magic that makes Thomas such a unique and lovable franchise. Of course, this is all my opinion, and we're not going to share the same feelings. So if you've seen all of seasons 1 through 7, feel free to share your own ranking down below. I'd love to see them. Now, will I review the other eras of the show, you may be asking? Well, as Victor Tanzig is so fond of saying, that's a story for another day.